What is dead may never die, as it will forever live on as clickbait. That's right, Game of Thrones' ugliest legacy, the failing of women. I thought it was interesting because Game of Thrones, in many ways, portrayed a wide variety of women truly well, very strong. They showed that could be powerful. They showed that they could be loving. They showed that they could be evil. They showed that they are just the same as any man could be. And honestly, in the end, it's the female actresses, the female roles that I will remember most deeply. And of course, let's get into the salt. Fans, critics, and even Jessica Chastain are angry over the show's problematic writing of female characters on and off the screen. How does TV's biggest show keep failing women? I mean, did they skip basically where Sansa, a female, becomes queen, Arya becomes a ship captain, and captain of the Kingsguard is also a woman? I mean, what? The women were some of the most powerful characters in the show. The idea that they failed them in any way is absurd. But some of the best hot takes we've seen, is just delicious, just delicious. This isn't new information. TV critic Maureen Ryan broke down the show's paltry female representation over the years in a Twitter thread when the credits for the final season were announced back in January 2018. A loathsome lack of representation that Salon's Melanie McFarlane picked up in her piece. The final Game of Thrones season shuts out female directors and writers. The discourse surrounding these plot points had included a pushback from the likes of Jessica Chastain and Ava DuVernay. In addition to many critics and fans, it underscores the fact that everything Game of Thrones has done to change the face of television as we know it, failing women will be its ugliest legacy. The series has aired at a time when gender equality and opportunity equity, have been among the industry's most important and impassioned conversations. I disagree with you. So too has there been discussion of the impact that opportunity has when it comes to representation of women on the screen. Yet both behind the scenes and in its episode storyline, Game of Thrones promoted some of the most retrograde and problematic tendencies of the industry when it comes to those conversations. What? Responding to a thread about the show's lack of female writers, writer Clarke Kent drew a connection between the representation behind the scenes and the problem with the Sansa moment. I would rather Sansa been like, it is what it is, to the events that led to her this season versus basically implying that getting assaulted and stuff made her stronger. She tweeted, just pitiful and deaf written by a cis-het man. I don't think there's any implication. I don't think that just because you're male, that doesn't mean you can't write good female characters. So is the implication that only females should write only female characters and then only men should write men characters? Or is the implication, as we probably know, women should just write everything? Even just in the episode is one of the many examples of how the series had used violence against women as a narrative tool, one that critics argue has neither earned nor justified creatively. Fans are predicting that the death is meant to trigger character outrage, meant to raise the stakes for upcoming battle scenes, but it also questions whether optics are worth it. The sensationalizing violence against a woman of color, exploiting her life for exposition. So, that one and only sister on the whole epic years-long series that's what you want to do? They killed her off, obviously. After years of backlash for using sexposition as a gratuitous use of naked women as a dressing, the episode makes a maddening cut away from Brienne of Tarth and Jaime Lannister during a rare moment of earned romantic intimacy. Now you're demure? Then she is stripped of all her power and agency, reduced to a lovelorn puppy begging Jaime not to leave her. I mean, okay. I don't understand this. That the females, and these are just, there's so many articles. The final Game of Thrones scene shuts out women and female directors and writers. By now, all Thronies know that our watch is not due to end until April 2019, when the 6-episode final season of Game of Thrones lands at last. But some of us, that delay is more than acceptable. Oh, this is a little bit older. Yet again, the Dude Fest abides. On Thursday, not long after HBO confirmed the 2019 date, Variety's Mo Ryan broke down the unequal gender split at the top ranks of production over the years on Twitter. It's sobering to say the least. Slight correction, Games of Thrones, as previously stated, had one female director ever, but she directed 4 episodes and not 2. Overall numbers, 19 directors, 1 woman, 73 episodes, 4 directed by woman. Again, this is the narrative that just because it's a woman, it would have been better. Isn't it possible that the directors they chose along the way were the best ones for the job? I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I guess I wasn't in the hiring room. Game of Thrones, Emilia Clarke did right by Daenerys even when the writers didn't. The fraught legacy of Daenerys Targaryen will live on long after the urgent clamor surrounding the end of Game of Thrones has calmed down. The first of her name, the unburnt queen, first of men, Khaleesi, blah, 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 blah. There is, however, at least one aspect of Daenerys' final hours that is completely satisfying and has nothing to do with her actual story. Emilia Clarke, who played this character for almost a decade, had one heck of a tricky job ahead of her in acting Daenerys' evolution this season. After years of playing her as a paragon of empathy, she had to tap into her character's latent violent streak, one that the show had heretofore used sparingly to underline her thirst for justice to rationalize her downfall. Whether you believe it or not, the show did its job in revealing Daenerys Targaryen, Mad Queen. Let's reflect on what exactly the final season let her actually do this in the lead up to that fateful moment. Quite simply, when it mattered most, the final season of Game of Thrones forgot to let Daenerys drive her own story. Stranding Clarke to do much of the heavy lifting is truly crucial moments. Take that excruciating minute of the bells that saw Daenerys hovering above King's Landing before deciding to annihilate it. Clarke didn't get a single word to sell the biggest moment of the character's journey, and yet she conveyed a lifetime of feeling in a single shot of Daenerys trying to breathe through her overwhelming anger before giving up and dive-bombing the ramparts. I mean, it's I understand not being happy with how your favorite show ended. That happens, but nobody is owed anything. And I would highly doubt that its ugliest legacy was failing women. I'm going to guess that its ugliest legacy will be how poorly the final season was received, how over 1 million people signed a petition to have the final season rewritten and re-edited and recut to make it good. I think this is common when you, I don't know, lose sight of the fandom. You lose sight of what got you there. I lost interest in Game of Thrones about 2 seasons ago. It felt like it had stagnated and it was just going for shock's sake. But I know that many people are still big fans of Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones finale tarnished its legacy, but the anger and joy of the fans live on. I mean, did it though? They even say Thrones has always been a water cooler TV show, the kind of zeitgeisty appointment television that is rarely seen anymore. As streaming increases in popularity, the amount of internet, ink, and workplace discussion spent on Thrones far outpaces the number of people who actually legally watch it. This year alone, people sent over 100 million tweets about Thrones, according to a release from social media site. I mean, in the end, the story is never about the control of Benioff and Weiss or HBO or even Martin. It ballooned out into the world and became something bigger. Game of Thrones is dead. Long live Game of Thrones fans. In the final weeks of the season, anger was dominant emotion as the writing characterization suffered in a mad dash to the finish line. The anger was given voice by absurd petitions for a redo, think pieces, some of which I wrote, misplaced coffee cups and water bottles, and an avalanche of dissatisfied tweets and memes. Fans spent more time dissecting the episodes than it took to watch them, so while on Sunday Westeros lost, and Dany and lost Dany and the Iron Throne. The real world lost something that brought us together for good or ill. And that's true. There was absolutely a time in my life when I was excited to talk about what was going on in Game of Thrones, and I think that you can't really take that away. But I definitely, I don't think any TV shows owe anything to anybody, and I'm just going to hope that they're hiring the best person for the best job. And that's usually this take is what the implication is, I think. The implication is it's a boys' club. They only hire boys because boys. That's not the case, I'm sure. There are laws against that. Hope you enjoyed Game of Thrones. On to the next thing.